Hello there, my name is Dargan, and welcome to my channel where I post variety gaming content. Today I'd like to talk about Slay the Spire and its upcoming sequel. Slay the Spire is an incredibly important and influential game, having basically set the standard for what a roguelike deck builder can be. In some ways, it's familiar in the way it requires players to utilize their resources, whether it's trading your health for an advantage or saving up tons of gold to buy out a shop. In other ways, it's entirely novel, whether in the design of its characters, both aesthetically and in terms of their mechanics, mirroring the classes of games like Hearthstone or color archetypes of Magic the Gathering, while mixing them together in such a way that they become entirely new. Its design has gone on to inform plenty of other games in the genre, and its influence is so reaching that I'd dare to say that Slay the Spire is to computer card games what Lord of the Rings is to modern Western fantasy. Basically, one of, if not the most important and influential pieces of media within its respective genre. It's a high honor for Megacrit's debut title, and it is a success that I sincerely hope they can replicate for Slay the Spire 2, which is coming, well, eventually. What we've seen so far about Slay the Spire is really enticing as well. An improved art style with fully animated characters, new playable heroes, new cards for the returning cast, and changes to the gameplay formula that promise to add a ton of depth to a game that is already capable of such an incredible diversity of emergent strategies and outcomes. I fully expect Slay the Spire 2 will perfect the roguelike deck builder and set a new bar for the genre's gold standard. However, I do think Slay the Spire has a couple of flaws that, while not incredibly obvious, severely hamper the experience for newcomers to the genre. So, if you'll allow me to take on the role of backseat developer for a bit, I've got a couple ideas for things that I think would really improve Slay the Spire 2. For the first item on my wish list, I think Slay the Spire 2 needs a better tutorial. Slay the Spire was my introduction to the genre, and I imagine it was for many others too. For your first run, you're made to play the Ironclad, who is by far the most beginner-friendly character with his burning blood and wealth of defensive options. You're shown the basics. Play cards to attack and block in accordance to your enemy's intent. Your deck reshuffles when you run out of cards to play. You have a limited pool of energy for playing cards, and you get to pick a new card after every fight. A straying eye might also notice the tips that pop up all the way at the bottom of the reward screen. You're also told how relics and powers function when you find them for the first time. It's all fine and dandy, but I think there are a lot of important things that are missed in this introduction, such as general guidelines for building your deck. The idea of picking the best card for your situation, instead of chasing a synergy or archetype, is not a terribly intuitive concept for newcomers to the genre. I know from my own experience and anecdotes from others, the sheer amount of frustration that comes from not knowing how to properly build a deck. You see the wealth of defensive options the Ironclad has, decide you want to play a block-heavy deck, and then die to Gremlin Knob on floor 6 because your deck consists of a Feel No Pain, a True Grit, an unupgraded Body Slam, and 3 copies of Shrug It Off. The importance of hunting elites is also not clearly communicated. Experienced players know that each act has a small pool of elites, meaning it's easier to build your deck anticipating which foes you have a chance to come across. It adds a small factor of consistency, whereas normal combats have many more encounters to potentially punish poor deck building. Furthermore, new players are not told the sheer importance of relics in powering up your character, and that elites are the primary source of those relics outside of chests and shops. Players are also not told the importance of card removal and skipping card rewards. After all, what is the first impulse of a newcomer to the roguelike deck builder genre but to build their deck? It's literally in the name, so new players keep building and building and building, not knowing that their deck is slowly turning into a Jenga tower that is doomed to eventually crumble under its own size. Having a small, focused deck is key to success in most cases, and it's yet another important concept that's never communicated to players. My proposed solution to this problem is simple. Your first run of Slay the Spire 2 should be on a special tutorial seed with a linear first act that is highly curated to introduce the player to these key concepts. Make the first combat easy so the player learns basic controls. Then after the fight, direct the player to pick up a card such as Carnage, with a little text pop-up explaining that since Carnage does more damage than 2 basic strikes for the same cost, it's a good card for clearing early hallway fights. Then the second fight would be against a foe that immediately rewards the player for taking Carnage by drawing it on a turn where, if the player hadn't taken the card, they wouldn't be able to kill the enemy and be forced to take a big hit. Direct the player to upgrade Carnage at their first rest site, then follow it immediately with a shot that directs the player to remove a strike. Now that they have a big damage card, basic strikes become less valuable, and removing one means drawing Carnage more consistently. Have them buy a good defensive card that costs 1 energy to complement the higher cost of Carnage as well. Right before the boss, give the player a selection of suboptimal cards and inform the player these cards don't suit the playstyle of the deck you've built so far, so consider skipping them. After conquering Act 1, let go of the reins into Act 2, and let the player forge their own path forward with the knowledge given to them in the tutorial. They probably won't make it to the finish line on their first run, but they'll have a baseline of information to help them on subsequent attempts. It's all stuff that a longtime player is very familiar with, but I think a proper tutorial will greatly improve the experience for people who might be coming to the genre for the first time with Slay the Spire 2. Make it brief so that veterans don't get bogged down with information they already know, but informative enough that new players learn what they need right off the bat. I think a proper tutorial is by far the most important thing Slay the Spire misses, and I personally had a lot of trouble appreciating the game before I knew any of these key concepts. Moving on, the second thing I'd love to see in Slay the Spire 2. Make it fun faster. Your first few combats in a run are usually rather straightforward, not requiring much thought aside from your card rewards and the path you choose to take. And if you have poor luck with either of those things, your run is quickly set on a trajectory for failure. What I don't mean to say is that the game should guarantee the player stumbles onto a game-breaking combo every run. The runs where you barely scrape by the final boss with just a sliver of health are just as memorable as the ones you steamroll because you stumbled upon something that completely breaks the game wide open. But sometimes your luck is so bad, you spend your first 15 minutes in Act 1 struggling through without any clear direction for your deck, and end up getting slaughtered in Act 2 because you just aren't powerful enough to take on those early fights. It feels like that entire run was just wasted, and I often just close the game and tell myself I'll try again later when my luck is better. Or worse yet, having a run so bad you die before the first boss and lose out on an opportunity to pick the risk-reward choices from Niao. I like my boss swaps, but swapping into Ectoplasm on floor 1 is an ailment best solved by immediately abandoning your run, and it's frustrating to get punished like that for having such bad luck. It's certainly a difficult problem to solve. How can the game's power scaling be adjusted so that the fun parts are reached faster without the game's difficulty being negatively impacted? The gameplay teaser, released a whole 11 months ago as of the time of writing, shows a glimpse of Niao giving the player a few card picks to choose from at the start of the run, so players will at least have the opportunity to find some direction for their deck before stepping into their first fights. They've also more recently teased that each act will start with an opportunity to select a blessing from Niao and other so-called ancients, and that this system will be replacing the double-edged bonuses that boss relics provide. Ending things off with one final request. I would love an improved compendium where I can read up on everything in the game. The one we have right now is honestly really bare bones, and contains a lot of information about things a player would just naturally learn by playing the game, and not much else. The only thing I can think of that the compendium is truly useful for learning is that certain relics are unique to certain characters. It makes sense that only the Silent can obtain Snecko Skull, but did you know that Cloak Clasp is unique to the Watcher despite having a rather unremarkable effect? Or that certain relics can only be found in shops? What I want is detailed information on every encounter, which fights and which events can spawn in each act, on what floors, how likely they are to occur, potential outcomes of events, even down to the exact health values and behaviors of enemies at different ascensions. Let me read up on the buffs and debuffs enemies use, and under what circumstances they use them, like how the Time Eater and Champ enrage when they drop below half health, or how Bear from the Red Mask gang only debuffs your dexterity on the first turn of the fight. Let me look up the price of potions and cards and relics in the shops too. Obviously, don't put all this information up front. Players should still be made to discover everything in the game naturally, but give players who really want to dive into those nitty-gritty details an accurate and comprehensive source of information to do so, right within the game. As I said earlier regarding tutorialization, information is key to understanding the Spire and learning how to conquer it, so having the means to easily and accurately find that information will serve to empower the players to make better choices throughout their runs and find greater success. So, that's all I've got. I really adore Slay the Spire despite the few grievances I have with its design, and I'm confident that Megacrit is going to do a fantastic job with the sequel whenever it comes around. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe or share it with a friend. Thank you for your time, have a nice day, and I hope to see you again soon. This is Dargan, signing off.